And now, through the magic of make-believe, lies in the First, Fourth, and Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, may I present the Brave New Workshop.
So tell us a little bit about East Hennepin and then the move, please.
Well, the East Hennepin was the second location. The first place opened up, and we thought we would make it look like a Victorian coffee house. And so lots of gold and red and nice framed portraits on the wall, and so mostly we didn't want it to look like a hippie joint because we were introducing espresso, and everyone thought that was dangerous. And so when we moved, we were evicted, and someone in the city council said, at last we got rid of that those troublesome actors and their beatnik coffee. And so we did. So we had we were evicted. We had Judge said be out by midnight Sunday. We ended up loading everything onto a rental truck and pulled away. And then said, now what are we going to do? Now that was the end of the Brave New Workshop. But the next day or two, we found we were at the Embers and looked across the street and saw that there was an available space. So it was very troubling because I had gone on record as saying the Brave New Workshop never cancels performance. So here we have no theater, and so we signed a lease on a Wednesday. We moved in on a Thursday, and so suddenly now we had a space. So we moved in on Thursday. On a Friday night, we did the.
So tell us a little bit about East Hennepin and then the move, please.
Well, the East Hennepin was the second location. The first place opened up, and we thought we would make it look like a Victorian coffee house. And so lots of gold and red and nice framed portraits on the wall. And so mostly we didn't want it to look like a hippie joint because we were introducing espresso. And everyone thought that was dangerous. And so when we moved, we were evicted, and someone in the city council said, at last we got rid of that, those troublesome actors and their beatnik coffee. And so we did. So we were evicted. We had Judge said be out by midnight Sunday. We ended up loading everything onto a rental truck and pulled away. And then said, now what are we going to do? Now that was the end of the Brave New Workshop. But the next day or two, we found we were at the Embers and looked across the street and saw that there was an available space. So it was very troubling because I had gone on record as saying the Brave New Workshop never cancels performance. So here we have no theater, and so we signed a lease on a Wednesday. We moved in on a Thursday, and so suddenly now we had a space. So we moved in on Thursday, and on Friday night we did the promised performance of the show that had been playing on East Hennepin. And I was always kind of proud of that because we didn't want to, we just didn't want to let them beat us at that point. And so that's how we got in here.
From someone who had spent their whole life kind of setting up tent and tearing down tent and moving from town to town, that mustn't have felt too uncomfortable to know that Wednesday to Friday you were just going to find a new place.
It was luck.
It was luck.
But we actually, this is a hulk of a building at that time. It was leaking from the very, very beginning. Some of us thought we could fix it by going up on the roof and laying down tar paper, but we really didn't succeed in that. And we didn't have any money, so a lot of things we fixed ourselves, which made them worse.
So one of the things we found when we started kind of cleaning a bit in '97 was dozens of parking tickets with your names on it.
Oh, well, that was a touring company.
Oh, tell us about that.
Well, we have a van, a touring van, and when you put 5 actors, a musician, and a tech man in a Corvair van with the props and send them off to do a show in Minot or Moorhead, the van can only do maybe 30 miles an hour. And we were doing these shows in the winter time. So after a time, we decided that maybe we should do these tour shows and have the cast, some of the cast, drive their own car, which of course resulted in some really hilarious moments. Anyhow.
Those tickets had your name on it.
So anyway, the van, the tech man here at the time said, hey, we have to park it somewhere. I said, if I get to use it, I'll park it at my house. And so that's where all the tickets came in. The van was in my name.
Any specific days or nights that, when you think about this place, things that exceptionally happened, or when you think about this space, what comes to mind?
Oh, it becomes after a while, it became sort of like one big continuous show. And you know, at that point, we were literally, we opened a show on Friday night and start rehearsing on the new show on Tuesday. And for a while, because we had such a tiny audience, we sort of had to come up with a new show pretty often. So some of the shows ran for 2 weeks, and then we had to start peppering out for another show. And the result of that, having sort of the constant grind of it, we began to say, gee, that was just really one show the whole time. Well, I still remember the hole in the ceiling from Jim Hudson sticking his head through the ceiling. And that went unrepaired for quite some time. But
Now, you and Jim Hudson hid a toilet seat for many years. Did that make it from Seven Corners to here?
no, what happened was that the sketch was that he would wear the toilet seat over his head with the door, and then open the door and say, J. Edgar Hoover for barroom toilet seats. just a little moment.
Yes.
Well, but you know, we were talking about let's be a little gutsy and let's say that there are no limitations, and so we were trying to open up the audience's acceptance of the idea that any thought, as an improvisation, any thought should be possible to utter on stage. And as a result, I got tired of it after a while. So I would hide the toilet seat after the performance so that it wouldn't be used, and then somehow or another, Hudson always found it again. So,
How about there were some weddings and things here too, right?
oh yes, yes. As a matter of fact, we had an actor. We had a tech man and his brother, was 14 and had become an ordained minister. And this is right in the middle of the time when we were allowing people to burn their draft cards at intermission, and Vietnam Follies period. And at that time, this young man started performing weddings here on Sundays. And wanted to be proper, and but people who needed a deferment found themselves wanting to be married, and so about 24 weddings were performed on the stage, and of course we also had Madeleine Murray O'Hare on Sunday nights debating anyone from the church who wanted to debate the existence of supreme deity, and so we were getting known for being sort of anti-religious, and the Green Beret people kept coming in and hovering around the front door because they didn't like Vietnam Follies, and then they came along and said the red, white, and blue sign is really is trying to satirize the flag, and so we have the sign inspector telling us that we had to take that down because someone was offended at City Hall. Took a vote finally, and they said, "Oh yeah, you can keep your sign." But it was like that. Every now and then they'd discover a new thing and saying, the city really didn't want us here. And they didn't want us on East Hennepin, kicked us out there. We come over here, they really didn't want us here.
This one's just kind of wacky, and who knows if it's a rumor. Did you used to have a .22 pistol in your office, and did you used to shoot a certain trash can with it?
Oh yes, I
Okay. It's barely not a rumor. Good for you.
Well, we had a circumstance where one night when everyone else presumably was gone, I went out down this little hall and opened the door, and a guy was standing there with a shotgun, and he said, believe it or not, he said, "Your money or your life." And I said, "Oh," and I closed the door. So he blew the door away, but by then I managed to go around the corner, and the 22 was fired a couple of times in the air, and he said, "Oh my God!" and he went out the emergency exit. But every time we put a new title in the front window for a while, we would get say Vietnam Follies 128th anniversary of American Foreign Intervention review, brick through the window. Bring up something about sex and the single man, brick through the window. And so the windows kept getting smaller. And then the police finally caught a guy one night. He was coming out of the bar across the street, coming by, saw we had a new sign, went over and got a brick and threw it through the window. And so it turns out that one guy was breaking our glass every time we had a new show. Little sweeter side of business.
Right. Lots of firsts and things in this building. Was this the first building that we got to see Lady Liberty as an icon?
Yes, and that came about because I did a production in which Lady Liberty appeared. An actress portrayed Lady Liberty, and I hired a lady stripper who had the unique counter-rotation talent.
I wasn't expecting that.
And so opening the big patriotic number was, standing behind was this gray, stern lady from New York Harbor, and she stayed that way until we reached a point in the show where she managed to do something else.
Yeah.
Some great stories about his time in the theater at 2605 Hennepin Avenue, which was the longest running location of the Brave New Workshop thus far, and his home as a performer, writer, and director for decades. But while Dudley became synonymous with a theatrical institution, he was also a dynamic individual who helped to shape generations of artists with his unique worldview and fearless approach to both entertaining and challenging audiences. Here's a little more of Dudley holding court and reminiscing as only he could. Take a look.
I know that your kind of involvement in the shows was up and down, and depending on what else you had going on in your life, and that I was lucky enough to have you direct 2 of the shows that I was in. And tell us about, you used to tell us about No Sacred Cows.
Absolutely. Yeah. From the very beginning, the idea was that, only because of my background, I would say nothing is sacred except the circus. And I don't believe that at any time in the 50-some years that there's ever been a subject that we would walk away from because it was too controversial. I think I'm kind of proud of the idea that it's loyal opposition to everybody, and so positive neutrality, promiscuous hostility, we get them all, and that was laid down early, and you're able to maintain it, and it's one of the things I'm most proud of. The other thing I'm proud of is that that there are, about 500 or 600 alumni of this theater, and almost all of them are still working in theater. And a lot of people who got their first paycheck from me are still making money, and some of them a lot.
Pat Ralph. And
But whatever magic has been created in this stage, on this stage, and I think the beauty of this is that this created an environment that you knew you could work the audience. This created an environment you knew you could say what you needed to say. I don't think people who come in and who are liberated by being in the cast and then being able to have an audience that over time has become accepting. And, so first we cultivated some actors who could do this and created an environment, and this became an environment, and then the audience, I think, grew. And so the proper environment for the audience came out of quite a number of houses that were for 5 and 6 people on a quiet Tuesday night here. We'd have half a dozen people in the audience, and the actors would still do the show. And I'd say, well, you're learning.
what's funny and what you can satirize. I mean, you just kind of casually said, "Oh yeah, we just burned draft cards during intermission."
Yeah.
Not many generations have that. And so what's your kind of point of view on this? What it was like to satirize in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and today, because it's a different world to satirize.
Yeah, and there were several times along the way when I still had a connection with circus. Some, I would say, that would try to hire me back, and I'd say, well, maybe if I could shut down the place, or but that put some people out of work, and I didn't like that. And then would come along and say, well, we've done everything now. We've satirized it all. And just when I thought, gee, we've run the course, something else comes up. And you'd say, oh, there's a show in that. And next thing you know, you're back into production. And so I think I never got bored because we were constantly doing shows. And probably financially foolish, but I like to run 52 weeks out of the year. So we never had a vacation time. And I think that sort of warped a few people because they always knew we were going to come up with another call, we've got another show to do, and always looking for talent and always looking for people who could do the work. And I think the biggest thing was trying to create the environment, which we were able to do in here, to create an environment that allowed for the kind of creativity and freedom of speech that they weren't going to get anywhere else. And I think having a lot of people were scared to death that they might come in and do improvisation and say something untoward, but as it turns out, the idea is still, all ideas count, and I'd say it's your idea, you own it, and it'll be the truth because it's your idea. And so if you have it that open, and if everybody trusts everybody, you can actually create some marvelous things, which I think you've been doing for a long time.
Wonderful.
So.
I could listen to him talk forever. We have gotten some messages that there were some problems with the streaming feed at the beginning of this program. And if you missed some of the information, and I have no idea if anyone did, it's unfortunate. But suffice it to say that this week, the Brave New Workshop lost a legend. as its founder, Dudley Riggs, passed away at the age of 88. And we have been honoring him by playing some interviews with him at the 2605 location, along with John Sweeney, the current co-owner of the Brave New Workshop. We're coming to the end of our time, and as I said, I don't know what all you might have missed at the beginning if it did cut out during the feed, but suffice it to say that Dudley was a legend. He was larger than life, and he lived a life so large that it is difficult to believe that anyone could have lived it. And as we reach the end of our time here this evening, the biggest thing to know about Dudley is that even if you only just heard about him tonight, it is pretty much guaranteed that he has had an impact on your life through both his art and the generations of artists for whom he opened the door. If you watched The Daily Show, Dudley's legacy had a hand in that. The same is true for television and movies that you might expect to be influenced by a comedy theater, like Saturday Night Live or The Smothers Brothers or The Naked Gun. But it's also true for movies like Sophie's Choice and American Beauty. For prestige and premium cable programs like 6 Feet Under and True Blood, critically acclaimed classics like Murphy Brown and MASH, and audience favorites like That 70s Show, and so many more that you can't even begin to cover them all. Dudley didn't just create art. He created an entire artistic ecosystem that has spread far and wide and will continue to live on and on and on. Dudley's greatest accomplishment is that he made it possible for so many other people to accomplish so much themselves. He built and left a framework that supports untold numbers of people, not just artistically, but even socially on an incredible scale. His influence is omnipresent, even when he was just a little too Minnesotan to truly take credit for it all. In a moment, Dudley gets to have the last word tonight, but know that for generations of performers who have been pulled into his orbit, he was the sun, and it is a privilege to have the opportunity to try to reflect just a little bit of his light. It is impossible to thank him enough. We are grateful. So let's let Dudley close things out.
So traditions are something that are good with this place, and you started a lot of them. And so we're going to end tonight with the tradition that some of us got to see in real time. But tell us about blowing out the candle and how that started. And then Stevie, if you could please go to the tech booth. Oh, he's already back there.
Oh, wow. Pat and probably Anita can vouch for the idea that for a long time, people thought I was a little nutty because I believed a lot. I really liked blackouts. That, little short piece. Like, for example, lights come up on a couple and they say, "Do the Duke and Duchess?" Blackout. So, not huge laughs, but just little moments that I found whimsical. And so we put maybe 15 blackouts in the show. And then one of the things that I would do at the end of the sketch would be say, "Well, good night, folks," and blow it out. The lights would go.